Give it up for Pat Riley, everybody. Another trade deadline where he's all day. I don't even know how I want to start this video because, literally every single team in the East today made a trade except for the Miami Heat. Now, let me make myself clear. I don't think they had a bad deadline. Well, no, they definitely had a horrible trade deadline, but it's not because they didn't make a move. By no means should they have made a trade just for the sake of making a trade, because when you do that, you end up sending a first-round pick for Terry Rozier, and obviously that's just worked out swimmingly. So I'm not saying they should have rushed into a trade or forced something just to do it, but it's not a good look when you're the only team in your conference that did nothing. Now, let me also not act like all the teams in the East did great trades for their team. I mean, we'll get into it real quick just to give y'all a quick little primer of everything that happened over the last day or two. You had the Pistons. They got Kevin Huerter, so they acquired some much-needed shooting as they're trying to capitalize on their great season and go on a deep playoff run. You also had the Knicks, who added some nice depth to their team with Jose Alvarado. The Celtics got Nikola Vucevic. They needed size. They got size. What a concept. Who knew that if you're a small team, you could go into the trade market and find a big man? Pat Riley didn't know. And when I say Pat Riley, I'm really talking about the whole Heat front office in general, because we don't know who the hell's in charge. Whether it's, Andy Ellisberg or Adam Simon or Mickey Arison or Nick Arison. They say Nick Arison has the final say on everything, but who's in charge really? All we hear from these other outlets covering the Heat is, oh, you can't blame Pat Riley. He's not the guy in charge anymore. Well, then tell us who to blame. Tell us who is in charge, because they got to ask what the hell their mindset is during these trade deadlines. Anyways, let's move on. You had the Cavs. I think they made a great move to shed some salary. They got Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder. They needed some more guard help. Of course, they also got James Harden. I don't love that for them, but they're trying. They're trying to take advantage of a wide open East. You had the 76ers, who knew Jared McCain wasn't having a great season, wasn't playing much. So instead of having him stick around on their roster for 10 years and lose trade value, they traded him for a first-round pick to the Thunder. You have the Toronto Raptors, who they actually had to lose an asset. They traded a second-round pick to get off Ochai Abachi's salary. So that's a Heat type of move right there. Same thing with the Orlando Magic, where they had to trade 2 picks to get off Tyus Jones' salary. And that's why the bad teams stay bad. You got like the Miami Heat, where we saw them attach second-round picks to get off of Dwayne Dedmon and KZ Okpala and Victor Oladipo and Hayward Highsmith, who was just waived today. So you basically gave Brooklyn a second-round pick just to waive Hayward Highsmith. That's bad asset management right there. That's what the Heat always do. That's what the Raptors and Magic did today, as they had to shed some salary. But outside of those guys, I think the Hawks had a great deadline. They traded Vic Krejci for 2 second-round picks. They did a low-risk trade and getting rid of Porzingis to bring in Kuminga, who obviously has a ton of upside. They made some other smaller moves too. And, of course, they traded Trae Young a few weeks ago. But you had the Bulls, who finally picked a direction, traded Kobe White for a ton of picks. Same thing with Ayo. They flipped Vucevic for a much younger Anthony Simons, more potential there. I thought they finally, that team is almost as dumb as Miami. They're probably more dumb, to be honest. But they finally picked a direction after years of being mediocre. If the Bulls can finally realize to pick a direction, then why can't Miami? You also had the Hornets, who had great moves as well. They acquired Kobe White to fit their blazing hot young core. They accepted Tyus Jones' $7 million expiring contract with those 2 second-round picks from Orlando. Even though I think Tyus Jones was flipped to Dallas, I saw even after that. But the Hornets got some picks there. They got some picks back to replenish the picks they lost for Kobe White. That's just masterful asset management by the Hornets. The Bucks did some pretty weird, meaningless trades, but obviously they were kind of the story of this deadline. It ended up doing nothing outside of, I think they traded Cole Anthony for Nick Richards, and then they sent Nick Richards something else because they said they want to compete. They fooled Giannis into wanting to compete. Here, we'll get you Nick Richards, and then we'll flip him right away for, I think they got Ousmane Dieng. Here you go, Giannis. Thanks for staying with us. Here's your prize, Ousmane Dieng. The Nets did a great job taking on Agbachi's salary with a second-round pick. Of course, the Wizards were all over the place. They got Anthony Davis. Not a move I love for them. They traded 2 kind of fake first-round picks to get them. They're just kind of weird right now. Their timeline's all over the place. But they're doing something. Then you got the Pacers. They made a great move with a couple hours to go before the deadline to get Zubac, although they sent out a lot. Benedict Mathurin and 2 first-round picks. One of them is unprotected. One of them could turn unprotected if it doesn't convey this year. So they gave up a lot, but they needed a big man, so they got one. Again, what a concept. Somebody should tell Pat Riley. You know, they knew that they made the NBA Finals just last year. And instead of sitting on their hands and doing nothing, they said, hey, we're getting Tyrese Halliburton back next year. Let's go ahead and, take advantage of this year, get a high draft pick. And then when he comes back next year, he'll get to play with Zubac. We'll have another great roster again, maybe go on another finals run. That team bought in when they knew they had a great team. But no, Miami just sits around there and does nothing. Hey, it's me, Pat Riley. And I've woken up from my slumber because I realized you didn't like the video and subscribe yet. So make sure to do that for me so I can get some rest. Thank you. Oh, let's go 6 years ago. Oh, maybe we'll get Giannis. Oh, we didn't get Giannis. Oh, maybe we'll get James Harden. I didn't want him anyways. But you don't get James Harden. Oh, maybe we'll get Kevin Durant. Didn't get Durant. Maybe we'll get Durant this time. Didn't get Durant again. Maybe we'll get Donovan Mitchell. Didn't get Donovan Mitchell. Maybe we'll get Damian Lillard. Didn't get Damian Lillard. Today, maybe we'll get Giannis. Didn't get Giannis. And now we're going to go into the offseason and they're going to say the same thing. Oh, maybe we can get Giannis. Let's do nothing today. And then they're going to be in the offseason and not get Giannis. Oh, I'm sick, man. Listen, there is no excuses for the Miami Heat doing nothing today. I know some fans, obviously we all wanted Giannis. It didn't happen. Some fans wanted Ja. Again, I particularly didn't, but they had to at least sell. That's where I'm at. If you are not going to get Giannis, sell some of the assets on this team. So if your plan is to wait for Giannis again in the offseason, which is stupid because he's never coming here, but if that's the Heat's plan, at least do something to help your chances. Like sell a few players to get more assets because they had time to do so. It was last night the Warriors pulled out because that's when they traded. The Kuminga trade I think was today, but they basically pulled out last night from the. Was the Kuminga trade today or was that yesterday? I forget. Either way, they were informed last night that their offer was out for Giannis. It was earlier today when the Timberwolves made their move for Ayo Dosunmu. You kind of knew that they relented on their Giannis pursuits. And no, the Miami Heat are still sitting there waiting until Shams finally tweeted at noon that the Bucks weren't trading Giannis. And then he still had 3 hours to pivot though and did nothing. I guess 3 hours wasn't enough for them. It was enough for Indiana to get Zubac. Once the Clippers started selling. But then even then, the Heat might have had more time to pivot because Barry Jackson also reported that apparently last night the Heat were informed that the Bucks will be keeping Giannis. So who knows when exactly the Heat found out. Barry also did report that it appears at least that the Heat weren't reluctant to offer up everything they have. It sounds like anything the Bucks wanted, the Heat were willing to relinquish, which I hope is the case because it's Giannis. Like, there should be no negotiations with I heard that some of the reporting around them is, there's an offer on the table from Miami, but the Heat are looking for some sweeteners to make it better. I was like, I hope that offer is everything you got because it should not be a negotiation. It's Giannis. You put everything on the table outside of Bam and figure out the rest later. So if Pat Riley's out there trying to be cute and saying, I'm going to give you Terry Rozier, Jaime Jaquez, and 2 first-round picks. Take it or leave it, Milwaukee. That would be stupid. Throw in Pella. Throw in Kasper Shakachonis. Throw in, I think I even forgot to say Khalil Ware. Put in Khalil Ware. Put in everything. It's Giannis. So I sure hope Pat Riley wasn't messing around, which Barry Jackson made it seem like he was willing to offer everything. But I'm not using that as an excuse to say, it's not the Heat's front office fault for not getting Giannis. The Bucks didn't want to trade him. No, it's the Heat's fault because they didn't have a good enough offer because of all these dumb moves they made over the years, trading assets to get off bad contracts, not selling guys when they're at their time. I mean, the Heat let Gabe Vincent walk for nothing. Caleb Martin walk for nothing. They only got a second-round pick from Max Strus because it was a sign-and trade. And now we're seeing them repeat the same mistakes when you're going to see Norman Powell walk in the offseason for nothing. You're going to see Andrew Wiggins eventually walk for nothing, whether it's next year if he accepts his player option this offseason, or it's going to be this offseason if he declines his player option. You're going to see these guys walk for nothing. And then the next time a star does become available, guess what the Heat are going to have? Nothing. And especially if Giannis goes to Minnesota. When the hell is it going to be the next time a star asks out? Because the plan after Giannis was Anthony Davis or Anthony Edwards. And that's going to kill two birds with one stone if Giannis goes to Minnesota, because now neither guy will be available and the Heat will be left with, go ahead, say it, nothing. That's what's wrong with the Miami Heat. I sure hope people aren't defending the front office by saying, oh, the Bucks weren't even serious about trading Giannis, so it's not the Heat's fault, because we heard some reporting like that. But I don't know, maybe Giannis didn't even want to leave. I'm tired of him too. He deserves blame also. He's soft. That's why at this point, I do want him. But for all intents and purposes, I don't even know if I want him, because he's soft. You want to trade or you not want to trade? Make up your damn mind. Because what scares me now is that had the Miami Heat traded for him, his foot would be half in the door, half out the door, because his heart is still in Milwaukee. No, you're in Miami, you're in Miami. Stop talking about Milwaukee, Giannis. If you want to leave, leave. Enough with this 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'm tired of it. And that's what scares me if the Heat even got him. If he wouldn't even want to be here, you know? But I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening in the offseason. I gave Miami a 20% chance prior to today to get him. Now that it's going to the offseason, I'm more so dropping it to like 5%. We know Giannis always wanted to go to the Knicks. They are going to go from having no tradable picks right now to, I believe, 2 tradable picks in the offseason. And the Heat's draft capital will also increase as well. I think it can actually go up to 4, depending on a few things. But obviously, every team's offer can get better. But we know Giannis wanted to go to the Knicks. And the only reason it didn't happen right now is because they have no picks. And in the offseason, when they have some, I just think that's where Giannis is ultimately going to end up now. Unless they go on some kind of miraculous run and convince him to stay, or maybe they luck out in the draft lottery and get AJ DeBanza or Darren Peterson. Who knows? You know, I think that's ridiculous hope by the Bucks, though. I think it was Sam Quinn who tweeted out the Bucks hoping to win the lottery to keep Giannis is the equivalent of a failing marriage having a baby, thinking it's going to save it. Like, no, that's not how it works. It only gets worse. You know, if you're in a bad marriage or a bad relationship, break it off. It's what I wish the Heat or the Bucks and Giannis would do, but they're too soft. They're both too soft. That's what I think. But I don't know. It's going to be an interesting rest of the season for the Bucks because obviously they want to tank. They're going to try to shut Giannis down to do so. I don't think it's in Giannis's nature to sit if he's healthy. So maybe that could cause some drama and, you know, kind of push Giannis out the door a little bit further than he might be right now. But either way, I don't think the Heat have any chance to get him in the offseason, especially now that they did nothing to sell this deadline. You know, maybe there'll be someone else available. I've heard some talk about Kawhi as the Clippers sold off everyone but him. But, I mean, I don't think any of us want Kawhi. I mean, you could talk me into it because he is an expiring contract next year. So if you were to trade for him this offseason and it doesn't work out, he could just leave. But if that's the case, you wouldn't want to give up a lot for him. You know, obviously, you don't want to give up a ton for him and then he leaves a year later. But I don't think his trade value will be super high. He's having an incredible season, but obviously the injuries are a concern. And the fact that he's an expiring contract, it just kind of gives Kawhi a lot of leverage there. But, yeah, either way, maybe none of this matters because speaking of the Clippers, the biggest winner of this deadline is OKC because OKC has the Clippers' unprotected first-round pick this year, and the Clippers were just on this incredible run and now decided to sell everyone, meaning that they're probably going to suck again, meaning that the OKC's pick is going to be better again. You know, I'm thinking these last few weeks, thank God the Clippers are winning. I can't let OKC get the first pick in the draft. And now the Clippers went and sold everyone and they're going to suck again. So OKC is going to get a high pick from the Clippers this year. OKC also has the Utah Jazz's pick if it falls out of the top 8. And obviously we know the Jazz suck, but they just got Jaren Jackson Jr. So they're going to be better now. So God forbid that Jazz pick falls, 9 through 14. And then the Thunder are going to have their pick. The Jazz pick at the end of the lottery, and then the Clippers pick probably early in the lottery. That team's going to be so stacked. Oh, man. And they might even go after Giannis if they fall short this offseason. What happens when the Rockets or the Spurs or the Thunder inevitably come up short in the offseason? Because one of them will have to, But then they're going to be more desperate to get Giannis than they were now. And all of those teams have infinitely more assets than Miami. I'm dropping the Heat's chance of getting Giannis to 2% in the offseason. Oh, man, what a bad deadline for the Heat. A little bit on the Ja thing. I posted a whole video yesterday about why I don't want him, even if the package was Simone and Terry, just because you're still acquiring Ja's bad contract, and you don't acquire a bad contract without getting picks. It wouldn't make sense to Miami. It would lock them into a duo of Ja and Bam for the next 3 seasons, which would keep them mediocre. I don't think Ja is bringing you to contention, and I don't want 55% of our salary cap tied to Ja and Bam. That just didn't make any sense to me. So I'm more so mad they didn't sell. I mean, Norman Powell is literally an all-star. You could have got a first-round pick from him, and don't tell me they couldn't have. I'm seeing guys go for 4 or 5 second-round picks. I would have at least taken that for Norman. You traded Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson to get him. So trade him for something, because now he's a free agent this offseason, and I didn't particularly want to pay him long-term just because he's a little bit older, and we don't know which direction the Heat are going to go. They still want to keep that cap space available for 27. God forbid somebody shakes loose, which probably won't happen. But it's like, now you have to pay Norman, because otherwise you're losing him for nothing. And I understand you got him for nothing, but just because you got him for nothing doesn't mean it's okay to lose him for nothing. You get him for nothing, turn him into something, then flip him for assets. Like what Kenny Beecham always said, you get assets and flip them. Like what OKC has done. They've been taking on bad contracts for years and then flipping them for more assets. They took on Chris Paul's contract from Houston with picks because he was considered a bad contract. He improved his stock, and then they flipped him for more picks. That's how those teams become contenders. And meanwhile, you have the Heat. They're going to get Norman Powell. They get lucky, turns into an all-star, and then lose him for nothing. Or they're going to pay him an exorbitant amount of money. And they screwed themselves there. They screwed themselves with Wiggins, who they could have easily got some sort of draft capital for. I think they could have got a first, but at least multiple seconds, which guess what? Is better than nothing, because Andrew Wiggins is a great role player on a great team. And the Heat are not a great team. So you're wasting Andrew Wiggins right now too for nothing when you could have traded him and he had trade value. And his trade value was at an all-time high right now. Who the hell knows what his value's like for the rest of the season? That's bad asset management right there. Wiggins too, he's got a player option at the end of this year for $30 million. Maybe he'll take it, because I don't think he could command $30 million on the open markets. But I could also see him opting out and maybe signing a long-term deal elsewhere with less money per year, but of course more money overall, maybe in a place that can contend or that he thinks can contend. And if that's the case, you'd be losing Wiggins for nothing in that case, which is very, very bad. So I think the Heat did a terrible job not to sell. They handled the Terry Rozier situation awfully, because they could have cut Terry Rozier like 2 weeks ago and shed a couple $1 million off the salary cap. But instead, they decided to keep Terry Rozier and use his fat expiring contract as a trade chip, which does have some value. A large expiring could have some value to another team. And the Heat decided not to use it. So they kept him on the roster for nothing, when they could have traded him a couple days ago and shed a little bit of money. But no, instead of cutting Terry Rozier, who's in prison, or not yet technically, but he might end up in prison. Instead of cutting that guy, they say, hey, let's attach draft capital to Haywood Highsmith, a very serviceable 3-and-D player who I already read is getting calls from contenders because they want him on their team. The Heat said, let's attach a pick to shed salary instead of cutting the guy who's under federal investigation. I understand cutting Terry would not have been enough to get under the luxury tax or whatever apron the Heat were at the time. They needed to shed a little bit more salary, but still, you get the point I'm trying to make. It's horrible asset management continually by the Heat. And what I said over the last couple of weeks is I wanted Giannis. I didn't particularly care for Ja. But what the Heat could not do is do nothing. That is the only thing they could not do. And that's exactly what they did. Exactly what they did. It'll be really funny looking back at this in like 3 or 4 months when the Heat win the NBA championship. I don't know. That's the thing. It's like we're talking now, and I'm upset. But if that 2% chance does happen and the Heat get Giannis in the offseason and have to give up less, then it all worked out. It did. But it's just stupid to hope for a 2% chance of something. It really is. It's like, I don't know. Hopefully everything happens for a reason. You know, when the Heat didn't get Dame, I was heartbroken. I said maybe that happened for a reason, and it almost led Giannis to Miami because Dame went to Milwaukee, tore his Achilles. That team sucked. Giannis wants out. Giannis almost ended up in Miami. Maybe he still does. So maybe hope everything happens for a reason. You know, maybe Giannis unfortunately suffers some kind of injury, and now that he dodged the bullets, maybe we end up getting him in the offseason for less, players or whatever. Maybe a guy like Pelle Larsson shocks the world and turns into a Hall of Famer. Who knows? All this stuff again has such a minuscule chance of happening. That's why it's stupid to hope for it. I'm not hoping for it, but point is, time will tell how bad this trade deadline actually was. I don't think we'll even know the ramifications of it for many years down the line. But as things stand today, it looks very, very bad. And it almost comes across as malpractice from the front office. I love Pat Riley. I've never been a guy to disrespect Pat Riley, but 80 years old is 80 years old. It's time to retire. We saw him enjoying his life at the Met Gala the other day. He looks like he's doing well. He looks very healthy. I'm very happy for him. But at some point, you got to retire. You got to move on. His way of doing things doesn't work anymore. You can't just throw a bag of rings on the table and say, hey, Ray Allen, come sign with us. It doesn't work like that. You can't continue to be mediocre every season, hoping that somebody pops up in free agency, and because you have the glitz and glamour of Miami, you convince them to sign with you. That's not how it works anymore. Guys don't reach free agency. They're traded when they don't sign extensions. So what good is it to rely on free agency when it doesn't exist? You get stars through the trade market now, and the Heat's way of thinking of winning every game, being as mediocre as possible, not selling assets at their highest value, it completely hurts your chances in the trade market, which is how you become a contender nowadays. Or you bottom out and get a high pick in the draft and get an Anthony Edwards or somebody like that, But unless they want the 2% chance of getting lucky and drafting the next Jokic, in the second round. So it's like, again, everything they do, it's like they're giving themselves a 2% chance to be successful at anything. Again, I'm not the guy that's going to speak ill on Pat Riley, but it's time to hang it up. It's been time for a while. I've said that. And as far as everybody else in the front office, who knows? I also love Andy Ellisberg. He's a genius when it comes to the salary cap. I hope everything is good with him health-wise. I know he went through some things personally over the last couple of years. So you hope everything is just good with these guys. But I don't know. There's got to be some sort of explanation for the kind of malpractice that we've seen. Because the Heat are supposed to be a first-class organization. From the Dolphins, I wouldn't be shocked. The Dolphins suck. We know they suck. This is the Miami Heat we're talking about, man. It's unfortunate. I don't know. It's time to move on from a lot of people, but I don't know. It's possible that there's some things I missed in this video that I wanted to get to. I took very little notes here, so I just kind of want to speak from the heart. So if there's anything I missed, we'll get to it in a future video. I'm sure within the next week or so, we'll kind of get a more detailed video out on what the hell the Heat do now. But I don't know. I was going to say it's going to be interesting, but not really. Not for the rest of the season, at least. But let me know what y'all think down in the comments below. I'm very curious to hear what y'all think about today's deadline. And also make sure to like and subscribe because I'm on the grind to hit 9,000 subs. Do appreciate all your support. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out, everyone. Look, pull up in your city trying to get that dead face. Do it on my own. I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off. Yeah, I need a head space. This homegrown bitch don't offend me.